Happy New Year. Ibrox Park. What? I can't see it, I'm blind. Can't see it, I'm blind. Oh, what's the lamp? Let's spec this. Brown bin. It's a brown bin, I'll get it. Brown bin, I'll take it out as a brown bin today. So, accreditation. Alec Anderson. The Alec Anderson. Accreditation Anderson. Hibs at East Road, just let me. It's only a wee bit. It's only 24 years out. How do we get on? Because I've got to do a post-match reaction. Did we beat them? The Hibs bust. Microphone. I'll get the microphone. Microphone into boys. If you're doing post-match reaction pod, conscious station is Forest decision engine. You're getting feedback. In the microphone. I just. Oh, remove the heat. Oh, no. Dr. Feelgood was doing Dr. Feelgood last night. Oh, it's doing Dr. Feelgood. Jersnet. Oh, the Jersnet party. Oh, it's a while. Animals a lot in them, man. Too old for the Jersnet. No, animals. Too much. What's going on in there, man? It's total. It's the toilet light. That's. Hang on. What is? Oh, gee, I don't. Oh no, just get away from that. What's happening here with the lights, man? Just get to find out what's going on. There we go. Oh, gee. Oh, there's no need for that. What's with it? Oh, I was trying to prove I could still get a scarf around my waist. Folk think it's a half and half scarf. It's actually two scarves stitched together. Fat bad. I know, no, it's okay. We'll do, preview pod, Hibs. Preview pod. It's alright, Trip. It's alright. Be fine. Hang on now. Just get this stuff. What the a candle? Oh, gee, Don't go in Jersnet, man. Don't go in Jersnet else we beat Celtic. It's wild. You can't handle it in a minute. Hey, boys, I tell. Just get us moved out here, Trips. Just maybe in a wee second. It's your Jersnet. No, it's Fat X. Myself now, innit? Just to mind me. Oh, fucking green, red, green. Oh, Fluminense. Fluminense. That was like, cause any excuse to get the gym. Oh, what's going on about the tassels? What the red, white, and blue tassels? Oh. There's that boy got in touch, and he's got a scarf with red, white, and blue tassels, and I didn't feel special. So, folks, just apologise. We've have to, done a lot of pods recently, and I've been, getting a lot of time between them to get it. Just with the hat. Oh, I thought the heat was a bit warm now. If you want to get kind of, the post-match buzz, beating Celtic and all that, you go to Jersnet. I was on Jersnet last night with Rob, and there's Frankie in the background, and just they were doing a few, but they were quite psyched, and then I was trying to keep up with them. And it's just, I think we need to just all calm down, just sober up. It's done. Beat Celtic, and everybody's going into perspective. We're okay. You getting that ringing in your ear? I'm getting that ringing. Like Rebecca Hall in that programme, which she's dead skinny and she can hear. So it's tinnitus, hen. You've got tinnitus. If you get a telly on or something, you just it's one of you get the radio on or somebody humming. Why would you be humming when somebody's trying to talk? It's just really. So this is going to be a short one. I think you deserve a break. We've been too many podcasts recently. They're all going on too long. It's so too emotional, isn't it? Too emotional. Got a bit emotional on Jersnet last night, and I realised I watched a bit of it back in the middle of it's wee after. But I've not seen the boys since Christmas. I've not seen the Jersnet boys since New Year. And you've got to celebrate these things. And I was watching it back while we were, just talking about it, and I realised, as is the case with my post-match reaction pod after, what day was it? Thursday night lights, like Europa League nights, Thursday at Ibrox. That's why it was good. I watched my post-match reaction pod back, and all over the place, And then I'm on Jersey of a day to calm down, suppose, but I'm on Jersey last night, and it was even worse on that inability to complete my and I start off making a point, and then I realise that I don't. You'll get sidetracked when you're halfway through making, and then you don't. You go back and you don't, and it's at the time in your head when you're saying the stuff, it's all making sense. But then you go back and you watch it and you realise, well, it's actually when you're podcasting, folk are watching this, I like to hear the points you want to make, and if you can't even make the points in an articulate fashion, well then what's the so? This is supposed to be a Hibs Easter Road preview pod, because I always do a wee preview pod, a wee preview, wee post-match reaction, so we're going to keep up the routine here, but really I would say you've had enough of me. You'll know me through, if you know me at all, through Jersnet, so just go check out Jersnet, because it's a hard time. My name's, no, this is your fat ache. Rangers needs to go to Easter Road and face up straight away, having just slayed one dragon of underachievement, as in Old Firm games that we weren't winning in a row and stuff. We now straight back to, well, this will be our third away game without a win in the league if we don't do the business tomorrow, and then we go to Dens Park on Thursday, and it's no Thursday night at Ibrox, but our European away form's good, so maybe go to Dens Park on a Thursday night. If we could think of them as the 1962-63 European Cup semi-finalists, and the 1968, 67, 68 Fairs Cup semi-finalists that they are. Dundee, and think of them as an away game in Europe. We'll get on all right on Thursday, so it's like a way. I've seen Dundee, and it was the Intertotal Cup. I went to see it's been FC Sarted of Serbia, because I just wanted to go and see us. I like my European stuff. My mate and I went there, and it was. So Rangers should treat it as a European night, because that helps us. It's two. We've done. We did two bad away games before we played Celtic at Ibrox. We didn't. We only got 1 point for two away games in the league, and having beat Celtic now, that's that half we're back. That monkey is half the back. We're now facing up to two straight away games in Easter Road, and it's 12. We're back to the 12 o'clock kickoffs. I don't think we like 12 o'clock kickoffs. So. And Celtic are just making out that it's I think the 14 Brendan's and the 14 points thing confused us. I think the 14 points thing just kind of confused us. Basically, just try to say we're so far in front that we like it's the worst mind games ever in the history of football management. If you feel like, come on, right guys, let's let our opponents get 14 points in front of us before we play them, and that way they'll take the foot off the gas. That can only last so long, that tactic. So they could end up Celtic more by the time they take the park against I can't remember who they're playing. It's a home game anyway, so it's a banker. They could have the chance basically to go 14 points clear again straight after, if we don't do the business, if we don't deal with this away problem that we've got, a problem with away games on the road in Scotland. Brilliant away from home in Europe. And preview pod coming to you in association with Jersey. Please check out. Maybe don't. I thought it was me that was on it with Rob. Rob's brilliant. Poor fella, you can see him, he's sitting there, he's just like, when's this guy going to shut up? Every time he asks me a question, he's like checking his watch, like, when's this guy going to shut up? I just, no. It was myself and Rob on last night. I don't know who's on the matter of fact. Rob was at Telters last night. I don't know who, but check out Jersey also tomorrow night, the post-match, the pod, it's the flagship show, the marquee show, 9:30. Every Sunday, Jersey, and if Frankie and they've all sobered up enough, well, they'll be all right to do that. It's not often we beat Celtic. It's not been often in the last few years that we've beaten Celtic in a meaningful game. So we had to enjoy it. And the thing is, you've got to check out Jersey, because the Rangers Podders charity is stuff on the telly all your Christmas and New Year for like Salvation Army and that, and homeless folk, and then you get donkeys. The donkeys getting maltreated all over the world. So you can adopt a snow leopard as well. That's another thing. So the charities and all that. But as I was saying last night in Jersey, Rangers Podders charity. This is the worst situation for us. Beat Celtic and we're all losing like 10,000, 20,000 views per pod. You know, it was just hear the cold wind whistling through the Rangers podosphere last night as me and Rob are trying to chat about that game because the boys. I mean, a few Celtic supporters have got in touch. A lot, you know, a lot of the guys who were getting in touch and saying they weren't going to be too triumphant or all that on Thursday after the game because you liked me and that kind of stuff. A lot of them haven't come back to us in the past few, except with the kind of really shocked, really stunned. Nobody was expecting that kind of stuff. But you know, a lot of boys come back, just total gentleman, big man, you know, Celtic man here. But respect to you for the pod and your team did well and played us off the part and blah. A lot of total gentleman. But it's just generally it's been a bit quieter, I think, throughout the world of Rangers pod. And makes it, as I was saying to Rob last night, I think there's about 24 Rangers supporters who actually watch pods. You know, it's Celtic fans that we rely on for our income. You know what I mean? Celtic fans rely for the thousands and thousands of pounds that we make through the Rangers pod. And so please stick by your. It's a difficult time of year for the Rangers podders. Stick by them. I'm sponsored by Gersnet, and I'm also sponsored by Paracetamol. Paracetamol doesn't sing. Should be sing. I Paracetamol, and I would say it's probably. I'm sponsored by Paracetamol and maybe Greg's Steak Bake. Greg's Steak Bake. Greg's Steak Bake. And you got to get the tomato soup. I like the tomato soup and a can of Coke. And it used to be one of the apple and cream the turnovers with the cream and the apple inside them. They were sensational. I don't think they do them anymore. So maybe like a pineapple cake. Vanilla slice obviously is ideal. Bavaria slice as we're known it these days. That would be ideal. But you got to get yourself a nice cake that's got a kind of ice and sugar, crust and cream combination. Get that in there and just just slowly, just take it slowly. And the steak bake is in, and the Coke, just the Coke a wee sip at a time, and just no music, no telly, just that'll be you. Eventually, you'll be right. It's raining. If you hang on a wee second, folks. Sorry, I'll just cracking off. Because the whole thing is, we just need to calm down now. We had the result. We had the result we wanted. We beat Celtic, and that is. And my name's Alec Anderson. All is quiet on New Year's Day. Well, it was certainly on the after the 2nd of January. Well, not round our way, but you know, from the folk that usually get in touch, way me or way us, a lot of the folk that get in touch, they're not making much noise after what happened on the 2nd of January. It's true, it's true. It's probably if we get pumped to Easter Road tomorrow, it'll just be they'll be back in my face again straight away. So we need to sober up. We've had the celebration, we've had the party. Rangers are going to get back to business at Easter Road tomorrow. So we're going to. But I want to put. We'll focus on that towards the end of this very brief pod. But I want to put right. It's got nip to Greg's. I've got to put right what I wasn't saying last night on Gersnet, for example, and I was doing the same in my post-match reaction pod after the game on Thursday. It was very. I kept saying things. For example, I was saying the thing about sports science, and I was doing it again last night on Gersnet. This sports science thing, this sports science nonsense. No, I'm not qualifying exactly what I mean by that. It's Nietzsche. I think it was Nietzsche that said the whole thing about language is just an umbrella that we use to protect us from the basic meaninglessness of existence. But the way I was using that umbrella over the past, it's just over excitement because of the result, relief because of the result. It was like an umbrella being caught in a gale, and it's it's been pulped inside out, and then it's starting to get a few holes in it as well. Because I was just my language was becoming meaninglessness. Sports science, sports science crap. I'm not in my head. It's in inverted commas when I say sports science, and when I'm saying this is just proving that sports science stuff was a lot of rubbish. It will sound to the outside world that I could just as easily mean I think sports science in itself is a lot of rubbish. That I am completely on board with what Chris Boyd has been saying and what he's started a few other people saying, a few journalists at press conferences asking questions of the players and all that. Sports science running the club, basically. Walter Smith told us the bank was running the club back in October 2009, but this idea that sports science is running the club, it should. I just what I'm trying to make clear. I'm still not doing it. I'm still not making it clear. I am all on board with sports science. I am all on board with it. I think, but I do not believe for a second that it is running the club in any kind of malignant way, any kind of undermining way. When I say all this sports science nonsense, I'm putting sports science in inverted commas, and I really mean the way that sports science has been talked about, purely with reference to Rangers by Chris Boyd since Pataudry. He was doing it at Pataudry. This is his way of saying the manager's rotating the team. I don't think he should rotate it like that. Sports scientists are only going to get sacked. You'll get sacked as the manager. I think all that from Chris Boyd, and I'm sorry, I love Boydie, and he's just doing his job as a pundit and what have you. I think it's a kind of malevolent job that pundits are doing on Sky. It's not just him. We know what Chris Sutton's like. It's right across the board. It's a style of football coverage that is controversy seeking. It doesn't trust football supporters just to enjoy the sport in and of itself. It wants your floating voters. It knows it's got the guys like me and you who just love we're Fitba. It's got us on board. We're going to watch Sky. They're going after the Domino's and Budweiser generation. I know that's Bud Light, but it's from the Mets. It's from the Shea Stadium. It's a ceremonial Bud Light for Shea Stadium. I absolutely hate Bud Light, but then when the right wing nutters in America started shooting Budweiser, I thought, oh well, I'll get on board with that. It's the bottle behind me I'm talking about there. That's ceremonial. I'll go for my Celtic supporting mate brought me that. I saw the Mets at Shea Stadium myself, and then that was something we bonded over, me and Jace. But sports science, it's the way it's been talking about. It's a meme. It's this kind of horrible thing of it's a feature of Scottish football, and I hate it when it's done to Rangers, where you take something that's basically descriptive, but you put an emphasis on it and a spin on it that makes it a pejorative, and it becomes hysterical. I think one of the main ones that we're most familiar with is anti-football. When Lionel Messi came to Ibrox in the 2007-2008 season in the Champions League group stage, a great Barcelona team, not the greatest Barcelona team, but just the cusp of becoming the greatest. Frank Rijkaard was still the manager, and we had Messi and Carlos Puyol and I think Thierry Henry was playing for like Ronaldinho, etc. Xavi and Iniesta, a team that's going to go in and win World Cups. There's three players in there that have won World Cups with different countries, but he came out with this phrase at the end of the game, and I don't even know if he did come out with the phrase Messi, because we held him to a 0-0, and it was a great night for Rangers, a great night, and I think it was something like three bookings they had two, and it was a very sporting game. Carlos Puyol in particular really changed my attitude towards him that night. I thought he was a real gentleman and a hell of a player, just tanking it up and down that flank all the time. But at the end of the game, because we drawn 0-0, and I think somebody, I don't know if it was a Scottish journalist, I don't know if it was an English journalist, probably a Spanish or Argentinian journalist had asked Messi about the Rangers' tactics, because obviously we had to go really defensive, and there's this whole bogus thing about please just open up and let us score lots of goals against you. That's the sporting thing to do. Football isn't about that. Football is about doing what you can for your supporters to get the best possible result. And Messi had come out, he either said it's anti-football or someone had put it to him as anti-football, and he'd agreed. And this got picked up by the Celtic support as they sat in terror. And I know from my friend who got me that they were terrified that Rangers were going to go and win the UEFA Cup 5 years after Celtic had made such a song and dance about getting to the UEFA Cup final. And at that point, it looked like we were going to win the league as well. We were going to win a quadruple that season. So that's when it's a kind of propaganda starts. So Lionel Messi he's a nice sort of, between him and Ronaldo, he's a nice guy. He's a guy that you trust politically as well as adoring his football. So he was saying Rangers was anti-football, and we were, if you're a neutral, it would be boring to watch Rangers getting to the European final that season. But I think the idea that we're supposed to just sit back and let teams score on us, as the Americans would say, is completely bogus and completely, it's malevolent as well. It's really a nefarious attitude to take. I remember, for example, Manchester United fans at Parkhead singing, "Where's your famous atmosphere?" because Celtic were doing nothing to attack Manchester United at Old Trafford in the Champions League. And Gordon Strachan, ex-Man U, was ordering Celtic to kind of hold back and defend deep and what have you. So the Celtic fans had nothing to cheer on. Celtic won the game. Celtic won the game, and it was the greatest result of all time. So there was no anti-football jibes that night. And what made it quite nefarious was the fact that Lionel Messi, obviously he's from Rosario, Newell's Old Boys, I think Rosario Central as well, were at the forefront of being against, there was a type of football in Argentina in the 60s particularly. Celtic suffered this against Racing Club of Avellaneda in the World Club Championship final, or the Intercontinental Cup final as it was in 67. It was just unbelievable dark arts, stuff that doesn't happen in football now. But then it was the Estudiantes de La Plata side that most summed up these tactics. They won the Copa America, I think 3 years in the trot or something like that. So they were always in 3 years in the trot. They were in this World Club Championship final, the style they had at the Intercontinental Cup, kind of home and away thing. And they were doing things like Carlos Ballardo, who became a World Cup winning manager by Argentina. He had darning needles in the fold of his socks, and he would put them into players' sides. He would stab players all through games. They would find out about players whose relatives had died, and they would get in their ear during the game and say, "You recently passed away, mother. Thought you were a piece of shit." This was examples of stuff that they had said to it ended up with the Argentinian government jailing some of the players for their reaction for the way they treated Milan, particularly in the so it'd be 69. It'd be 69 that when Milan won the European Cup, in 63, but then in 69 they played in the final, and it was, people were getting their skulls fractured and stuff like that. It was just such filth from Estudiantes de La Plata. Nothing like, Rangers were a bit defensive against Barcelona that night at Ibrox, so it became this whole thing of that's anti-football. Is it the phrase? It's ANTEFUTBOL, all one word. Anti-football was this pejorative real criticism in Argentina of, is the opposite of what Menotti then came in, Cesar Luis Menotti. He wanted a kind of beautiful football. When he came in to be like Argentina manager that won the World Cup in 78, but it was anti-football was a toxic thing, and so I think somebody had thrown this phrase towards Messi to let him use it, but it's easily translated into English as anti-football. And it's something like that. It's a meme. It's easily remembered. There's not too many syllables involved, and you can just throw it. That's all we got. Instead of, this is a Scottish team getting to a European final. How rarely does that happen? This is a great thing for the country. We don't want to, we're not bothered about that kind of stuff. But it's a disgrace. It's anti-football. It's maybe a bit boring as a neutral. It's utterly scintillating for the supporters of any team who can get themselves to a European final. But the idea that it was anti-football was complete nonsense. So you really do have to explain yourself when you're talking about these things. And I'm talking about these things, and I just keep going, this sports science thing's a lot of nonsense, which could make it sound like I meant, fitness advisors and looking at players, their muscle mass and I remember Xander Diamond. There's something about Northampton Town. Remember Xander Diamond that played for Aberdeen? He was at Northampton Town towards the end of his career, I suppose. And him coming in at the beginning of the season and getting weighed. My mate, he's no longer with us, but he was a physio as well, and he was with Clydebank. I think when Ian McCall was managing Clydebank, that's what he did. He was responsible for getting all the players weighed to see what they'd been doing with themselves over the summer, and just obviously to be able to then manage their fitness throughout the course of the season. This was Clydebank were absolutely struggling at that point in time financially. I think they were playing at Dumbarton. Didn't have the ground or anything like that. So even clubs at that level have got the basics of assessing the physicality of the players, looking at how their fitness is going, and it would seem to me to be a total prerequisite, a demand of supporters that our players are fit enough. And so the idea of slagging that, of saying why are we rotating players, and then screaming the phrase sports science into your Sky microphones as if it's the most horrible thing. It's like, I don't know. It's kind of medieval. It's very hysterical. It's very kind of witch hunty. It's like, well, she floated, so she must be a witch. I don't know. I find it incredibly backwards. And if you want to take two quick extremes of sports science, I mean, when Chris Boyd, the last time he was doing this thing about sports science was at Fir Park. 17 years to the day since Phil O'Donnell had tragically died there. And if there's any way of working out, this is a big thing in sports, it's trying to work out players, what's going on with their heart, if they get any heart conditions, is there any way you can possibly predict that's like the actual strain of playing so much football so often is going to have terrible, the worst consequences on them. We've got to find that out. We've got to push sports science to that point where it's not just about making the players as fit as possible, it's about guarding them against damaging themselves through overplaying. And then you have an incident when Václav Černý, the man, one of the men that Chris Boyd was raging had been dropped, we were calling the press conferences, Rangers press conferences after that, were calling his character into question, all but literally, by asking him if he needed to be rested, for the first half against Motherwell at Fir Park. He's taken a corner against Celtic the other day, and a thing I always see him doing, because when it's into the Copland Road, up that end of the park, Černy's got a little isotonic drink. It's a bottle of Lucozade or something like that. It's a power drink, and it sits by the side of the park. So he goes up when it's a corner at Rangers, has a wee slug out of that. It's like hydration. Just hydrating yourself is sports science. Technically speaking, that is sports science. It doesn't seem very scientific because it's a basic, but it's something are you properly hydrated? It will give you more energy. You know yourself, just going about your business. If, for example, you've been up all night getting absolutely wrecked celebrating Rangers beating Celtic for the first time in far too long. You'll know the difference that being hydrated makes to you just going about your normal day-to-day life. So if you're actually out there giving it your all, running up and down a park in a game of professional football, that is a given, and it's something that hydrating yourself is totally required. That's sports science. So I feel as if that was a really nasty and deliberate dumbing down of the scenario with players being rotated under Philippe Clement, and I'm sorry if I didn't explain that properly, and I'm glad that the result we had the other day, the performance we had against Celtic, which was total, it was a total performance. Everybody focused, everybody on their tactical jobs, doing them to perfection, and going at it for the entire duration of the game. It was a total performance, and I'm glad you could almost see that we got that. Partly, I still think, as a result of being off it a bit in the previous two games. Because when you're trying to pull yourself forward, you're trying to pull yourself up, a Rangers still a club in recovery from 2012 as far as I'm concerned. When you're trying to do all that, you're going to have to take little steps back to get that little surge forward from which you can then pull the rest of you up. And this is another thing I wasn't making very clear last night. Newton's third law of motion. I kept chucking that out, talking on the Jersnet podcast. It's Newton's third law of motion. Newton's third law of motion. Right, you can look that up on Wikipedia, and if I know about it, you'll definitely know what it is. But I don't think I ever at any point said, every action demands an equal and opposite reaction. That's what I'm talking about. I mention it so often, but this is what I'm getting at with Rangers, almost deliberately or subconsciously. The only way they were going to beat Celtic and get over that line, of finally beating Celtic under Philippe Clement, was by almost deliberately taking their eye off the ball or rotating players, trusting in reserve players in their previous two games. It was like, we saw at Hampden, we scored 3 goals against Celtic at Hampden for the first time in 22 years. and yet we still didn't win the game. Other things went against us, yes, that shouldn't have, but it showed you the level of commitment, the level of effort that was going to be required, and I think the players had that locked in their heads. We went all out that day. We gave it everything at Hampden in the League Cup final against Celtic, and we still ended up losing the match. How much more do we have to give? And thinking about how much more they'd have to give in basically little over a fortnight's time in their next chance against Celtic, I think they can't help being a little bit more focused on that game, a little bit more focused on the New Year derby against Celtic, and it's going to be to the detriment of their performance or even their availability against Dundee at Ibrox, St Mirren and Paisley, Motherwell at Fir Park. It's like the drawing back of an elastic band. We're trying to fire ourselves forward. We're trying to project ourselves so far forward in terms of performance to get to the top of our performance abilities, the top of the very top of the kind of physical and mental output from that team, that they almost have to kind of pull themselves back, like an elastic band getting drawn back to fire yourself forward. And it was Dundee at Ibrox, where we won 1-0 and hit the woodwork about 4 times, but were still very quiet compared to what we'd been like against Celtic at Hampden in our previous game. And then getting worse against St Mirren, a terrible first half against St Mirren and Paisley, and a terrible first half against Motherwell at Fir Park. I think that our mind was on this game against Celtic, which we needed to win. And I think when you see what happened with Rangers in that season, we're getting accused of anti-football 2007-2008, and Chris Boyd was talking at Fir Park about how Barry Ferguson had played 65 games and Davy Weir had played 60-odd games, and I think was it 68 games I think in total we played that season, our longest ever season. But that's why we didn't win the quadruple. That's why we didn't win all 4 trophies. That's why, we're proud of the players, because they were running on fumes when it got to the end of it. That's why we ended up, surrendering a 2-goal lead against Queen of the South, a championship side, in the Scottish Cup final at the end of that season, despite the fact we'd been holding Barcelona to a draw and beating Lyon 3-0 away in the earlier part of the season, because the players are knackered. They're exhausted. The league was making us play, was it something like 5 games in 10 days towards the end of that season, every single one of them utterly crucial. But at the end of the day, it's sports science to say that because we're having to play so many games in such a short period of time, having played so many games all throughout the season, that's why we get knackered. That is sports science. You're going to get knackered when you play so many games. So that's why you're rotating players just now when the targets are a bit smaller. Just get Celtic beaten. What else was I not making very clear? I was talking about the Milan 94 team. That's when you know I'm drunk, when I start talking about Milan's 93-94 team. And I was talking about how when they went into it, because Alessandro Costa Curta, who I also forgot to mention, his nickname's Billy Costa Curta, so there was a good link with Rangers as well. I was talking about how we had played on Thursday against Celtic with so many holes in our defence, so many selection problems in our defence, so many players missing, our first choice defence players missing. We decided to just go all out attack. Go all out attack and just pin Celtic in their half of the pitch, cut them off at the source, so to speak. And this was a great tactic, and it reminded me of Milan, who'd been defensively brilliant all through 93-94 in Serie A. It reminded me of the way they'd attacked the 1993-94 Champions League final when they beat Barcelona, by 4-0, despite that it was the Johan Cruyff dream team, Stoichkov and Romario, Pep Guardiola playing in that game. Ronald Koeman at the back for them, Eusebio, all these guys, but I think I said last night that Milan team, because Costa Curta and Baresi had been suspended, the 2 centre halves extraordinaire had been suspended for basically cheating by Jurgen Klinsmann in the semi-final against Monaco. They were suspended for that final, that Milan had nothing in defence. They had Paolo Maldini playing at centre half, but Christian Panucci come in. He was playing on the opposite side that he would like to at fullback. Mauro Tassotti was the other fullback. And you had Filippo Galli, who was a great player. A reserve, hadn't been playing first team football all season, but we're talking a Milan reserve here. He was sumptuous in that final. They didn't have nothing in defence, Milan, that night. They still had world-class defenders in there. They were phenomenal all over the park. But the emphasis was on them attacking, and it's Rangers on Thursday still had defensive work to do. But what they did very, very well, and mostly it was about the midfield stepping up to the plate. And Rangers had a tortured metaphor with the performance, the stage performance style of My Bloody Valentine. But it was the back four was all business, but up front it was just all over. We were absolutely sensational, totally kinetic, I would say, from Nico Raskin and Diomande, them included. And it was basically a 4-6 formation it felt like we were playing the other day, and the six were everywhere, you know. It was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I think I said last night as well, I went off on one about Celtic fans not are trying to imply that because their team was shite the other day, that somehow means it didn't really count. It's really strange, you know. One of those kind of stupidly bitter things you do when you encounter the kind of comeback from a few Celtic fans. Doesn't really matter. It's the same in our support. It's just plenty decent Celtic fans out there, obviously, who know the score, and the score was 3-0 to Rangers, and they won't be particularly worried yet, and they're quite right. And as I say, Brendan Rodgers himself coming out and saying, "Oh, it was only." I think it was the 14 points thing that confused us, i.e. we're so far in front, we don't actually know how to cope when there's no pressure on us to win this game. Aye, very good. So I had offered up Carter Vickers as an example of the fact that Celtic were clearly trying in the game as much as they possibly could. It was just all about how Rangers had totally dominated them. And I was saying that Carter Vickers, if you offered me one player, I could have one player from that Celtic team in the Rangers team, it would be him. It'd be his old-style centre-half. Just does not stop, never stops, loves a physical battle, loves defending. Davy Weir started, just really, really... he never stops. He keeps going, kind of thing. And like the ball going through his legs for the first goal, coming off him for their last goal, for a third goal in the game, just summed up the fact that he was just trying as much as he possibly could. But I went off on one a bit, House, and I never brought it back round to the fact that Carter Vickers was the evidence of Celtic having tried their heart out and just not being able to do anything against us the other day. I think Celtic didn't play because Rangers didn't let them. Aye, what else was I not talking about? There's something else I didn't make clear last night. Oh, the worst thing I didn't see on Gersnet last night, and I'm actually, it's a way here of making the points again, putting a different spin on them. I woke up yesterday morning. I woke up on Friday morning, and I couldn't get this thing out of my head. It's a scene from a film, and I couldn't remember what the film was. It's a film from the 80s that I knew I'd seen more than once. I knew it wasn't a particularly serious film, but there's a scene where two detectives are outside their own precinct, and they're having a hot dog, and they're being slagged by the hot dog vendor, who they know well because they're at that hot dog stand all the time, and he is reading the newspaper, which is slagging the cops for not being able to catch this killer that's going about New York, and and the hot dog is just slagging them off. Because he uses it turns out it's the New York Post he's reading. It turned out the film is Highlander. I thought for a second it would be Trading Places or some sort of John Landis comedy or something like that, but it's Highlander. With Christopher Lambert when Sean Connery plays somebody who's never heard of a haggis. We've got Christopher Lambert playing a Highlander, and we've got Sean Connery playing a Spanish Egyptian, and it's good. It's good. That's not the most outlandish stuff that happens in it, but everybody loves Highlander. Everybody loves at least the original Highlander film. I certainly do. But it's like, that's what it is. It's Highlander. I had to look it up on Tinternet, find it on YouTube. And the guy is saying that the hot dog salesman is looking at the paper and he's reading the article that's slagging the police, and he's going, what does incompetent mean? What does baffled mean? And I just thought, Celtic only managed to get one shot on target against us. I think that's the worst that Celtic have had against any opponent since Opta stats began. And they'd only managed to get was it they'd conceded? I think we had 24 shots on their goal, 9 on target, and that's the worst they'd conceded since stats began. And that's a tribute to Celtic. That is basically as a tribute to Celtic. But I couldn't help. I just woke up the next day with that in my head. What does only having one shot on target for the whole game for the first time since records began mean? What does letting Rangers absolutely drive you into the ground mean? But the film was Highlander, and the thing I forgot to mention was the vendor, the hot dog vendor. He is reading the newspaper, and the newspaper headline is "Headhunter 3, Cops Now." Even the headline says it's the New York Post. There's the paper, and it says "Headhunter 3, Cops Now." Absolutely loved it. I was talking about 3 left foot finishes. A players having 3 left foot finishes. Now, Rob, I'm not going to steal it from him, but Rob Fawcett, who was hosting the pod last night on Gersnet, he forgot to mention a stat. As a stat, he forgot to mention it. He told us about once we were off air. It's an absolute belter. I hadn't thought about it. See if you can work it out. It's about the Rangers starting 11. It's a great stat, absolutely fantastic, and I hadn't thought about it at the time. It's a really obvious one, but it's a lovely piece of trivia. I think it's happened before at Rangers, but it's not happened for a while, and it happens very rarely about that starting 11. It's probably been mentioned somewhere out there in Rangers podding land somewhere by somebody else, but you can come back to tell us about that special stat about the Rangers starting 11. But Rob was the guy he put it in my mind. It was fantastic. I think for me, with Clement, he's put together the component parts now. Finally getting the victory over Celtic. It doesn't mean he's now going to rush on. And I was setting up this whole thing where Rangers have been on the same run as Celtic. The reverse of the form and Old Firm derbies of late. Steven Gerrard won against Celtic at Parkhead, his first win against Celtic at Parkhead. That was the last Old Firm game of that season that was cut short because of COVID. We beat them 2-1 at Parkhead. The following season, we drew 1 and won 4 of all 5 Old Firm games that season, 55 season. And in the following season, we beat Postecoglou at Ibrox in Postecoglou's first trip to Ibrox as Celtic manager. We won 1-0, Hollander with the goal. So that was 7 games in the trot that Celtic had failed to win against Rangers. So we've just ended the same thing there. 7 games in the trot, Rangers had failed to win against Celtic. And similarly, Ange Postecoglou's first victory against Rangers was a 3-0 victory at home in the first Old Firm game of the new year. And it came after they'd had a bad result, a kind of embarrassing result in Paisley against St Mirren. So the parallels are there, but I don't think, because Celtic are much better financially placed and have been since we went down into the bottom tier in 2012, I don't think we're going to be winning the league this season or storming ahead the way Postecoglou was able to after that particular victory. But we have turned a corner in terms of, at least, we don't know what's going to happen from now on for the rest of the season, but we have turned a corner in terms of, I think that was the last big one that you had to get out of the way before we could say that, Clement, before we can say, right, he's definitely the man. We won't be able to say that until he wins the league. That's the thing. As a Rangers manager, you have to win the league title. But he's not won as a trophy. He has now won as a trophy. He won a trophy last year. He won it over a year ago. He's got a derby one now, and I think he's scored 3 goals. It's slowly building up a wee thing there where it's pathetic, but this is from tiny acorns. These things go. He has an unbeaten record against Celtic at Ibrox. At least he's never get as much as a draw at Parkhead, and it's only 2 games at Ibrox, but he's scored 3 goals in each of his 2 games against Celtic at Ibrox. Drew 1 and won 1. So he's starting to build up a wee head of steam there, a nice wee stat that's kind of on his side. It's kind of stuff that will start getting mentioned on Sky as we go into the next Old Firm game, and albeit that's going to be at Parkhead. But I think that kind of stuff, it helps confidence grow. He's got, in Europe, the competence is beyond competence. He's given us historic wins in Europe. That beating Nice, talking about beating Lyon 3-0 in 2007-2008 when we got to a European final. He's gone and he's beaten Nice, another Ligue 1 team, on their home patch by 3 clear goals. He had the win against Real Betis last season, their first ever win against Spanish opposition in Spanish soil, which helped us top a group. So he's won a group which we were no chance of winning before he arrived. He's won a European group stage for us, which is a major thing in terms of competence, and is yet to lose in 8 games away from home in Europe as Rangers manager. He got us to the top of the league last season. He has had us at the top of the league. He has topped the table, and he did it from behind, kind of February, March last season. And when we were top of the league, he then had us staying top of the league. He then had us, winning games that helped us stay in the top of the league for just a short period of time. It wasn't enough, and it all eventually fell away. But there's fewer and fewer things you can hold against him now. It's really just about him actually managing to go and win us the league title. Tomorrow we go to Easter Road, and it's a big thing. I think your attitude toward, if you're looking at Clermont as having to do this, tick off various things, then tomorrow you might almost say it's a hangover. It's a hangover for Rangers physically and emotionally. It's an early rise with a hangover. Having won that game, it was so monumental on Thursday. A part you could see is going out there tomorrow and not being able to plough ahead, not being able to do anything, being a bit stale, and Hibs taking points off us, and it would seem like it's right back to square one. But a part of me is almost willing to allow that, because we just had to get the offer. This season has been about stabilising, rebuilding, and getting the squad back to getting the squad built up, so it's able to mount a challenge next season. Danilo the other day, I was talking about the third goal we scored against Celtic the other day. It was so emotional. That was the one we wanted. That was the one we wanted so bad. I found myself quite able to remember what had gone on with the first goal. Fairly able to remember with basic clarity what had happened for the second goal that we scored, but also you knew we were going to have to do it properly. We were going to have to make sure Celtic were completely unable to get back into the game, and because it could quite quickly revert to form that game the other day. If Celtic had pulled one back with 10 minutes to go, say to make it 2-1, we started getting nervous. The doubts come out again. Old habits come out, and next thing we've lost a 2-goal lead, and it's an absolute tragedy for us, and the manager would probably get sacked. So you wanted that third goal so you could truly enjoy it, and when it did arrive, I lost it. And I thought it was a much better goal than it actually was. It was a great goal, but I thought, as I was saying last night, as I was coming out of Ibrox at the end of the game, I thought we'd basically every Rangers player in the park had touched the ball. It was a lovely flowing move from one end to the other. It was a great goal. It was a goal that summed up our tactic throughout the whole game, which was to nullify Celtic as they got towards the halfway line, to swarm on top of them, to stop them getting going in any kind of attacking momentum, and away we went. But it was just hefty. It was total Yogo Bonito. It was total Yogo Bonito. You can't, if you say samba, that's too cliched. It's been too cliched for a long time when it comes to Brazilians, but never got to. Yogo Bonito's going the same way. I always remember reading Maradona's autobiography, and he'd shove your Yogo Bonito up your ass, talking about the game in Turin in 1990, where a future Rangers player, Claudio Caniggia, put Brazil at the World Cup. But it was just lovely to see Danilo going in there, and he is, in the words of Jazz Coleman, living in the 80s. Danilo is living in the 80s when it comes to playing Celtic. That's him scored against them in 88, in 81. 80s. I'm living in the 80s. 80s, I have to push, I have to struggle. See, that's quite appropriate, 80s. Get out of my way, I'm not for sale no more. Well, no, he can't. 6 million, and hopefully he's not for sale, because we're going to get the best of 80s. Let's kamikaze till we get it. That's Jazz Coleman's. I just realised that was the lyrics for the first verse. You can look that up. That is actually the lyrics to 80s. Look up the performance on YouTube of Killing Joke doing 80s on the Tube, the old Channel 4 music programme that was on at tea time back in the 80s. Look that up, then Jazz has got the kind of Navy SEAL camouflage on his face. It's half Kiss, it's half kind of the group Kiss, and also a bit Navy SEAL, like he's actually on the warpath. Jazz Coleman is terrifying. He is actually terrifying. I know we lost Geordie recently, absolutely tragic. What a guitarist. But I would look that up. Don't look up the official video. The performance on the Tube is just Very, very scary man. A very, very scary man, Jazz Coleman. And Killing Joke. Killing Joke. Did I mention that? But look, I was just thinking about Danilo, how he scored in the 81st minute the other day, and he scored in the 88th minute against Celtic at Hampden. And that is him. He scores 88th minute, and it's an equaliser, and we get beat. We lose that game. He scored in the 81st minute, and it's the third goal we've scored in the game against Celtic, and it's the third without reply. It's a total triumph. We have won that bad boy, and I was looking up Danilo. He was born in April 1999. He's got the 99 in his back. He's born in April 1999, and that's a month before we won the league at Parkhead, beating Celtic by 3-0. 2nd of May 1999, the best days of my life. And I also was looking at Corinthians. Have got a couple of nicknames. I remember, because I just remember when he scored against Morton in the League Cup. I was watching the coverage back. I come back for that game, and I was watching the Premier or whatever it was called then, live coverage, and he'd interviewed Michael Beale about Danilo. I think that was the first goal he scored for us. No, he scored against Livingston, I think, in the league. Or anyway, but he scored against Morton anyway in this live game, and he was and Michael Beale was giving it. Yeah, he's a Corinthians man, because Michael Beale spent time at Sao Paulo. I'm more of a Paulista, whatever it is, Sao Paulista in the big derby over there. I don't know if Palmeiras are involved in that, or whatever. But one of their nicknames is Time do Povo. Time do Povo, which is the people's team. We are the people. We are the people. The people's team, and also Todo Poderoso, the Almighty. The Almighty. We are the mighty. I know there's us and Beef Juniors, but we are the mighty teddy bears, the mighty gels. So it's quite a few, and the whole rowing club thing. But that applies to a lot. The Clyde and all that. And that applies to a lot of your regatta-based Brazilian football clubs. But I thought that was quite the mighty, and it's how the mighty have fallen, you might say, when we are celebrating so hard and celebrating so long and celebrating so tumultuously our first victory over Celtic since, we beat them 3-0 at Ibrox the last time, but they stopped Michael Beale getting sacked. And I was pointing out the fact that Rangers have at least stopped Brendan Rodgers' Celtic going the whole season unbeaten. Because I mentioned at the beginning of the season, I thought it was a real possibility for Celtic. They could have an unbeaten domestic season. They could be winning the treble and doing something very special in the Champions League because of how they're placed financially, etc., and because of how bad things were for us when we didn't even have our own stadium, and all the noises coming out of Ibrox were just saying, this isn't going to be a good season. This is going to be a rebuild season. So for us to stop them doing that, it might seem a bit, a crumb from the Masters table sort of thing, but it's important. It's important, apart from anything else, it's important that it's us. I hate it. It's important that it's us that stop Celtic having a unbeaten domestic season. I remember when Ross County put them at the League Cup in 55 season, but that meant officially Celtic weren't going to be able to win a fifth successive treble. So, and they had the fans outside rioting after that, which always seemed slightly OTT and slightly a little bit ingrate. But I was a bit miffed that it wasn't us that had stopped them. We'd had the chance to do that. We're in the process of doing that already this season, because because remember it was October before we had the first Old Firm game of the season. Let's not get into that. In 2020, 2021. And we beat them 2-0 at Parkhead. And that was another game in which it was the fewest shots on goal Celtic had ever had at Parkhead since records began. It's a totally dominant performance. But that was a part of a tide that had already been turning. It was our second straight win against Celtic at Parkhead. So it's technically speaking, we were stopping Celtic winning the league that season. But the first team to actually put them out of a trophy and stop them getting their fifth treble, the first team to beat them out of a competition in 5 seasons was Ross County. I was a bit miffed. I thought, I wanted it to be us. I wanted it to be us that toppled them. So it's nice this time that we were the team that took away their chances of an unbeaten domestic record. And because it's happened so recently, Celtic doing it in 2016, us doing it in 2021, now the whole league season unbeaten. The Celtic did it, of course, they won the treble, didn't lose a single domestic match in all 3 competitions in 2016. But it's becoming a thing, They suddenly found after the League Cup final that we weren't a brand new club anymore that had only won 3 trophies. We're a team that had won 118 trophies, so Celtic were they were nicking in front of us with 119. So the history obviously sticks with fans of opposition clubs much more than we realise. So we should keep that in mind when we're doing little things like this, stopping them, being the latest team to go the whole league season unbeaten, with us having done it in 2020, 2021. Also trebles. I don't remember the numbers of trebles getting mentioned that much until Celtic had won more than us historically. So the next step, I think, for us is to go and beat Celtic in the Scottish Cup, or make sure that we are the ones winning the Scottish Cup this season. We're not winning the league this season, I wouldn't imagine. But you're looking at a situation where Hearts beat Celtic home and away last season. Hearts beat Celtic home and away last season, and we couldn't beat Celtic once in 5 attempts. So that works two ways. You could say, well, maybe Rangers are this season's Hearts, because the gap, even though we're in second place, the gap to first place is still 11 points at the halfway point of the season. It would make it feel like there's some sort of ghost, there's some sort of kind of team in between us and Celtic. You know, the gap is so big that there's room for it, and we're like effectively this season's best of the rest, third place team, because we're so far behind them. It's not really proven anything just doing it once, beating Celtic, and if we don't go on to win some sort of trophy this season or win the league next season, we might just be this season's Hearts. But I think we know we're not, and we need to get ourselves beaten. It's because Celtic obviously will be more concentrated and trying that bit harder when they're playing against Rangers, their number one rivals, and it was great that it was us that was doing it to them the other day. I don't really know. I seem to have covered more than I intended to cover for it's supposed to be a short pod. But one thing I'll say, when I was doing my post-match reaction pod the other day, I didn't realise how much we had dominated the game. Two things I didn't realise, and it's quite strange, a bit of a dichotomy, the two things that kind of go against each other. I didn't realise, because you're watching the game, you're nervous, you know this record we've got against them, you never want to get ahead of yourself, you're protecting yourself emotionally. I knew Rangers were doing well compared to most of our recent performances against Celtic over the last year or so, but I didn't realise until I watched it back on television that night, how completely we had dominated the game, tactically, physically, energetically, everything. Completely bossed the game. Celtic certainly had their moments, they had their chance, none more so than when Furuhashi puts the ball in the back of the net, but he is clearly offside. But at the same time, I had no idea, I would have never thought that we had as little as 39 point something percent possession. We had less than 40% possession. I would have thought we had far more than that. And I'm talking about language, I'm talking about my use of language on podcasts since full time on Thursday. During the game itself, I found myself shouting, "Sweat them! That's it, Rangers, sweat them!" I'm not used to using this phrase, I don't know where it's come from, but it was just the way we were playing. The way we were playing, we were just keeping them in their box, keeping them in their half, not letting them out and hassling them, harrying them, not letting them settle. So I've watched a Rangers game, a game against Celtic that we have completely dominated and got the scoreline to indicate that. But at the same time, we've given them 60-odd% possession. It's let them, or just virgin on 60% possession, it's let them have the ball in their own box, have it up to maybe the 35-yard line. Not that there is one on the pitch, but you know what I mean. They're maybe getting towards the halfway line at the most, and then we're just shutting them down. You shall go no further. The thing I loved about this game is, despite missing our captain, missing first choice centre half, a couple of centre halves, having a left back playing at right back, missing our first choice goalkeeper, we just went out there and absolutely dominated. We did not let them anywhere near our goal. Well, we did obviously. We got there a couple of times, but that was it. And it seems to be the tactic. It seems to be the way to move forward. I don't know how that's going to work against the likes of Hibs. What was it? And there was another thing I got wrong. Yeah, last night in Jersey, I was talking about Robin Proper having come on as a substitute for. I think I was probably thinking about John Souttar or something like that, who didn't even start the game in the League Cup final. Coming on as a sub for Balogun. It was of course Duron Sterling that came on as a substitute for Balogun when Balogun went off in the second half during the League Cup final against Celtic at Hampden. I think it's just been such a confusion of centre halves, and I was trying to, how great a moment. I was trying to point out how great a moment it was. Rob was asking us how great a moment it was for Robin Proper getting that goal against Celtic the other day. And it was just part of the general confusion into which Robin Proper has landed. He scores his first goal in Scottish football against Rangers, for Motherwell at Hampden, because he's like This is a new thing to me. And also, do we not play at Ibrox? Why am I at Hampden? Is this a cup final? It's just a general kind of state of confusion he's come into. And then defence is getting changed during the game. We're getting uh, coming off against Spurs. We've got John Schuster coming off during the first half against Spurs, and then during the League Cup final we're having to swap the central defence. Robin Propper's having to come on at centre half after like 16 minutes against St Mirren at Paisley when Balogun has to go off, and then we're losing James Tavernier as well, who's a massive component, a massively important component of that defence, to injury on the eve of the Celtic game. So it's the league game. It's a general state of confusion, but I got that one wrong completely. I don't know why I was thinking that, but I think it's more compliment to the team that with such confusion going on in defence about the selection, they managed to pull off such a fantastic performance. Tomorrow, it's about finding out whether the Rangers are kind of hungover or are we enthused, regenerated, rejuvenated. I would normally like Hibs' kind of run of competence. They are 7th in the league just now. They have won half the amount of games we've won this season. They have lost twice the amount of games we've won this season. But of the 6 matches they have managed to win so far this league season, Hibs, most of which they have struggled for this season, 4 of them have been within the last half dozen games. They drew with St Johnstone. I think St Johnstone were down to 10 men as well. They're a kind of late equaliser, perhaps, up at Perth. I can't remember. I've not even seen the highlights. I was too busy ranting and raving about our win the same day on Thursday. But that speaks to me of just exactly what I was talking about Rangers. It's Newton's third law of motion. It's like Hibs have thought to beat Rangers at Easter Road, which our fans absolutely crave. The Hibs fans would love it to beat us at Easter Road because they don't do it very often. We will need to take our eye off the ball. We need to kind of relax almost during this game against St Johnstone, and that's what. So I don't think that's how it works. Hopefully, it's the start of Hibs being on a bit of bad form, but they shouldn't be a problem for us. But they will be. Because Hibs are always up for it against us. So David Gray is a manager who's certainly, as a player, he had our number a couple of times. I remember him scoring against us. Did he make it 4-0? Our first season in the Championship, we took a pasting in about January, Christmas time. Easter Road, they beat us 4-0 going on 5 or 6, we were all over the place, absolutely terrible. And David Gray scored in that one, and I think he scored another goal against us, maybe at Hampden. That I don't really know. It's not been very well publicised, so I don't really have the details there. But it's Rangers on the road. We've gone from something that we're really struggling with, beating Celtic and overcoming that successfully, spectacularly, straight into the other scenario that we are struggling with this season. It's Rangers on the road in Scotland. So we went from 2 straight away wins, or the game at home to Kilmarnock in between times against St Johnstone and then Ross County, as we built up for the Spurs and League Cup final doubleheader. And then since we lost that League Cup final, we've had 2 failures to win away from home, at St Mirren and then at Motherwell, building up to the game against Celtic at Ibrox in the league. So it's weird. I don't know if that's, as I say, our focus was removed in those last 2 domestic away games because we were just thinking between the League Cup final and getting Celtic back at Ibrox, beat Celtic. The whole focus of the club was on beating Celtic, and they've taken it away from those 2 games domestically. So we can't say that we haven't won away from home this season domestically. We can't say that it's always been terrible, but it's largely been pretty embarrassing, our form on the road. We drew at Tynecastle. Hibs have beaten Hearts at Tynecastle this season. Both the Edinburgh clubs struggling, but Hibs definitely resurgent at the moment. I think it's going to be this is just the second of 9 January fixtures, and it's the first of 2 away games on the trot for Rangers. So we've got nothing this time. We've got nothing to save ourselves for, except a kind of meltingly busy schedule for the rest of this month, which is overstated when it comes to at the Brox, playing Fraserburgh in the Scottish Cup at Ibrox 2 weeks tomorrow. But it's thoroughly understated when it comes to the following game, which is Manchester United at Old Trafford in Europe. That's a chance for real history there, a chance for a real doing. So yeah, this month has begun with the kind of sensational, pulsating, emotional and kind of seminal victory over the league leaders and our greatest rivals, which has perhaps saved Clermont's job, but it's going it's going to end with a tie versus Union Saint-Gilloise as a Belgian legend of a club, which could put us into the last 16 of Europe for the second straight season and increase the chances of someone coming in to take our manager away from us in the best possible sense for him. You know, because he could end up, if he does anything against Manchester United at Old Trafford as well. I don't think he's going to be a Man U manager, but it will certainly increase his stock. So I feel like Clement has got a chance of going from the cusp of one game from the sack to, you know, one month, one continuation of the form this month from Rangers not being able to afford to keep him. Tomorrow, before Celtic kick off, as I say, we could have handed their 14-point advantage back to them on a play, and that would just invite ridicule for the true meaning, the true worth of our derby victory. But me, right now, I'm just glad that we've kept a manager over 3 different years, 3 different calendar years, for the first time since Steven Gerrard. The next target, of course, is to keep him for a whole season. You need to keep a manager for a whole season for the first time since Steven Gerrard, and the next target is, of course, to win the league for the first time since Steven Gerrard, and I would love it to be Philippe Clement who does that. But the most immediate target is going to Easter Road, and it's our least favourite kick-off time, and not feeling it's kind of like back to the coalface, but feeling lighter, feeling a weight off, and feeling like we're loving our football again, and just get out there and get steamed in. And thanks very much for that, folks. I am now going to go and have myself a wee Greg's, a can of Coke, some more paracetamol, and a wee lie down, and I'll try and talk to you a lot quicker and a lot more clearly after the game tomorrow. Enjoy your Saturday night, folks.